Welcome back to Meshmen Studio's introduction to the node graph. Today we're going to take a look at backdrops, sticky notes, and groups. Here's an example of how we can use backdrops. So I used them to organize different parts of my node graph so it's easier to remember what I was doing. For example, if I want to create a backdrop around these channels here, I can just select them and hit tab and type backdrop. You can see here on the corners you have these little handles. You can expand them depending on how you want to do this. And in the node properties, you can obviously rename it, name them channels, for example. You can also go in here and change the background color. The C order here is if you have multiple backdrops. So sometimes when you create a backdrop within a backdrop, the new backdrop actually is behind. So you can say here the C order. You see here, if I change the C order of my original backdrop to -16, it's visible, but if I increased it, we're gonna be on top there. So that's a way to tweak how they will essentially be on top of each other. Another useful thing to annotate stuff is the sticky notes. For example, if I want to remember something or pass something over to someone else, remember to remember. If you zoomed out, you can hit the W key, and essentially when you're on top of a backdrop, you can then move it around. So if you have extension pack, you can go to right click, annotations, image node from libraries will open an interface, and here you can, for example, let's say that this here, I'm working on dirt here, and I want to remember this one is dirt, and it's very easy now to remember that this section here is the dirt material. We're gonna briefly take a look at groups. This is gonna be a lot more coming down the road when we start to do materials and all that. So in the basic form, a group can be a material, a gizmo, or just a collection of nodes that you wanna identify and keep track of. I'm just gonna take one of my shelf items here. Let's take this bricks material here. I'm just gonna drag it in here and take a look at this using shaded view by hitting the 0 key. And there we see we have some bricks. So this material here is essentially a group. So this is how it looks inside. We have tile maps. There's an HSV to essentially grade the image. So if we want to create something ourselves, let's say that we have a merge node, cloud, we have Perlin noise, we have a Spotify, not to be confused with a streaming service. These ones here we want to create something with. We can select these and hit Ctrl G to group it. Here we have something a bit similar to a material, except the material has multiple outputs and auto connects. This one is essentially just a single output here. If you want to create an additional output, we can just type tab and say output. We can name this to something, Spotify. So if I connect like this, so this change of node is going to be outputted here to the output. And this Spotify is only going to be output to the Spotify output. So looking here at the output again, we see here we have output. And if I look at Spotify, it's going to be only the Spotify node. A group can also be controlled from outside, so you can essentially create your own custom node that you can reuse. So looking here inside of my group here, let's say that we want to expose the cloud here, for example, so we can control this from outside. If I go to my node properties up here and say size here, for example, you see this wrench. If I click the wrench, from the outside here, we can now see this size is now available for us to adjust from outside of the node here. So going back here again, let's say that we want to be able to say the Perlin size, to change the seed. On the Spotify, we want to be able to change all of these. I'm gonna expose the merge Perlin overlay slider and the merge Spotify, and I also want to be able to control the blend mode here. So going back here on my outside, that's all of my settings. I can now start to control individual aspects of this, change this, can change the blending modes. And if you want to change the order or rename something, you can go in here and hit the P button to the group node here up in the corner, and now you get the list here. So for example, let's say that we want to have the cloud below the Spotify, Perlin below the Spotify, the merge Spotify under the Spotify settings. Select this merge Spotify and say up, merge Perlin. We want to have Spotify, merge Spotify, Perlin, and merge Perlin. And now in the interface, we see that has updated. We can also go in here and double click and rename Perlin amount, and now the settings here have been renamed to Perlin amount. So you can see here you can start to create your own custom procedurals and materials using this